Maybe you're watching this tonight in a house that has gone quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the other kind. The kind where two people share the same roof, the same table, the same bed, and somehow feel like strangers passing in the hallway. Maybe the arguing stopped a long time ago, and what's left is something even heavier than arguing: silence. And somewhere in that silence, a prayer has been forming. One you've almost been afraid to say out loud. Can God really restore a marriage that feels this broken? Not with a slogan on a coffee mug. Not with an empty promise that everything will magically be fine by morning. But really, honestly. So tonight, let's open the Bible together. Not as a rule book, but as a letter from someone who has watched broken things be made whole. Stay with me, because what God chooses to restore, He never restores halfway. And before we go one step further, I want you to hear something. If your marriage is hurting tonight, that does not mean your faith is weak. It does not mean you did something to deserve this. Some of the most faithful people I have ever known have cried themselves to sleep beside someone they no longer knew how to reach. Pain in a marriage is not proof that God has left. Sometimes it is the very place where He does His quietest, deepest work. So wherever you are right now, separated, barely speaking, or just tired in a way you can't explain, you are exactly the person this was made for. In the next few minutes, I want to walk with you through three things, slowly. First, what the word restoration actually means in Scripture, because I promise you it is not what most people think. Second, the one marriage God Himself chose out of every story He could have told to show us what He does with a love that has fallen apart. And third, what hope is supposed to look like when you are not even sure your husband or your wife will ever change. This is not going to be a promise that everything turns out the way you've pictured it. It's going to be something better than that and more honest. Give me until the end, and let's find it together. Let's start with that word we use so often, restoration. When we say we want our marriage restored, most of us are picturing a rewind button. We want to go back to who we were before the words that can't be unsaid, before the distance, before the wound. But that is not how God works. In the book of Joel, God makes a promise to a people who had lost almost everything. He says, "I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten." Read that slowly. He does not say He will erase those years. He does not pretend the locust never came. He says He will restore them. He takes the very years that were eaten, the wasted seasons, the lost time, and He gives back something whole. That is biblical restoration. It is never pretending the breaking didn't happen. It is redemption, God taking the broken thing in His hands and making it new. And here is the part I really need you to hear tonight, because it changes where we start. God's first work of restoration is almost never the marriage itself. It is the heart. In the book of Ezekiel, God says, "I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." Did you catch the order? Before God mends what is between you and your spouse, He reaches for what is inside you. Because a marriage does not begin to thaw until a heart begins to soften. And the only heart you can hand to God tonight is your own. That is not a burden. That is mercy. It means you don't have to wait for the other person to move first. You don't have to fix them. You only have to bring your own heart to the one who has been turning stone into flesh since the beginning of time. Now let me tell you about a marriage that, by every human measure we have, was finished, beyond saving. There was a man named Hosea, a good man, a prophet, and God asked him to do something almost impossible to understand. God told him to marry a woman named Gomer, knowing from the very beginning that she would break his heart. And she did. Gomer was unfaithful. She left him. She chased after other lovers, after the next promise that turned out to be empty. And she fell, and she kept falling, until one day she ended up in the worst place a person could end up in that ancient world. Enslaved, stripped of everything, standing on an auction block in the middle of the marketplace, sold off to the highest bidder, like she was worth nothing at all. Now picture Hosea, picture the husband, standing somewhere in that crowd, watching the wife who betrayed him be sold in front of strangers. He had every reason on earth to turn around and walk home, every right to fold his arms and say, "She made her choices. This is what she gets." That is what you and I might have said. But then God speaks to Hosea again, and what he says still takes my breath away. He says, "Go, love her again. Love her again." And Hosea does. He pushes through that crowd. He counts out the silver from his own hand, and he buys back his own wife, pays the full price to redeem the very woman who shattered him. He takes her by the hand, and he brings her home. Let that sink in. Out of every picture God could have chosen to describe how he loves you and me, this is the one he picked. Not a love that waits until we deserve it. A love that walks into the marketplace, pays the price, and brings the wanderer home. So if you have ever lain awake wondering whether your marriage is simply too far gone, too much said, too much broken, too many years eaten, I want you to remember this. God built an entire book of the Bible around a husband redeeming a wife the whole world had already given up on. That is not a coincidence. That is a message written long before you were born, and tonight I believe it found its way to you. Nothing in your story is past the reach of a love like that. But here is where I have to keep my promise to you. The promise of no empty words. Because maybe right now you're thinking, that's a beautiful story, but I am not Hosea, and my husband is not coming home. And friend, I am not going to stand here and hand you a guarantee about another person's choices. I cannot promise you that your marriage will look exactly the way you have dreamed it would. No honest voice can, and you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort. But here is what Scripture does promise, and it is not small. It promises that the prayers you pray in the dark are never wasted. It promises that a heart fully surrendered to God becomes a quiet, steady strength in a home, something far harder to resist than any argument you could ever win. Do you remember the wedding in the town of Cana? It was supposed to be a celebration, and right in the middle of it, the wine ran out. The very thing meant to bring joy simply ran dry. And Jesus quietly asked them to fill the empty jars with plain water. Then he turned that water into wine, and not the cheap wine they started the night with, the best wine, the kind that made people ask where it had been hiding all along. Sometimes, friend, God does not restore your marriage back to what it used to be. Sometimes he is making something better than what you had at the very beginning. And you can't see it yet, because right now it still looks like ordinary water sitting in a jar. So pray for your husband, pray for your wife, but let God begin where he always begins, with you. And now I need to say something gently but clearly, because real love never asks you to call harm by another name. If you are in danger, if there is abuse, if there is violence in your home, God is not asking you to stay in the path of harm to prove your faith. He is not. Seek safety. Reach out to someone you trust, to your pastor, to people who are trained to help you. Stepping towards safety is not a failure of faith. It is honoring the life God gave you. Remember, his restoration has always begun with his tenderness toward the one who is hurting. And tonight, that person he is bending down toward is you. So, can God restore a broken marriage? Yes, he can. but maybe not in the way the world keeps trying to sell it to you. He does not hand you a perfect ending on your schedule. He gives you something deeper. He promises his presence in the very middle of the breaking. He promises to give you a new heart when your own has gone cold and tired. He promises that no marriage, no person, and no situation is ever past the reach of a God who once counted out silver to buy back a wandering bride. The years the locust ate can still be restored. The heart of stone can still become flesh. The water can still, even now, become wine. Tonight, you do not have to fix everything. You don't have to have the answers. You only have to bring the broken pieces, all of them, to the one who has never, not once, turned away a broken thing brought to him in honesty. So if something in this touched your heart tonight, leave just one word in the comments below. Restore. Let it be your prayer, and let it remind someone else that they're not praying alone. And if your soul needs to keep hearing words like these, words written for the weary, subscribe and walk with us. Because every week we open the Bible together and we discover again and again that it was written for you. You are seen, you are not forgotten, and your story is not over yet.